This presentation is about summary for English 1302. I'm Dr. Kendra Unruh. Steps for summarizing. First, you want to read and annotate the source. Annotate means to take notes, highlight things, underline things, circle words. But the most important part about this process is that you comprehend what the source is saying. So you may need to read it several times and take lots of notes. Number 2, for long text, break into subdivisions. Write paraphrases of the main ideas in each section. Number 3, restate the points. Don't just describe. For many students, they get confused between the point and describing what the author is saying. Make sure that you are restating what the arguments are in the paper. That's what the points are. That you're not just describing something. So you might want to use words like the author argues rather than saying something like the essay is about. Because oftentimes if you say that the essay is about something, you're just describing rather than talking about what the source is arguing. Number 4, include brief quotes, but do not quote entire sentences. Number 5, write the summary in your own voice. This means put it in your own words. Sometimes there may be words that are jargon or words that are specific to the field that the writer is using. If it's a term that the writer has coined him or herself, you probably want to put those words in quotation marks. But otherwise, you need to put the rest of it in your own words. Number 6, keep your summary objective. This means make sure you're just talking about what the writer is saying and not putting your own opinion in it. Number 7, edit to reduce repetition and combine points into single sentences if possible. So use these steps for summarizing when you have a source that you might be using for your research paper or a source that you might be using for your blog assignment. Here are some do's and don'ts of summarizing. Some do's. Begin by naming the author of the source. It's very important that whenever you have a summary, a paraphrase, or a quote, that you start by giving the author's name. This helps you avoid plagiarism. Keep your focus in mind. Many times you might pick up a book or a very long article for your research paper, and not the entire book or the entire article will be helpful for you for that research paper. So keep your focus in mind so that you know what to leave out and what to keep. This does not mean that you leave out important information and then change or unethically represent what the writer is trying to say. But this means that you can leave out information that isn't pertinent to your paper. For instance, if you were doing your research paper about global warming and you checked out a book that was all about global warming and it was like 300 or 400 pages long, but your research paper only focuses on petroleum and oil and how that has contributed to global warming. You could leave out all the other things about maybe coal or other pollutants that are talked about in the book and just talk about the parts that are about petroleum and oil. Next, use signal verbs. Signal verbs are words like asserts, believes, argues, says, contends. You can find a long list of signal verbs just by Googling signal verbs. But we want to use these verbs to introduce the summary. So you might say something like, according to Professor Smith, or you might say, Professor Smith argues, or Professor Smith says. This is also a good way to name the author of the source at the beginning. And then, of course, at the end, you need an in-text citation. Even though you've put it into your own words, You have to have an in-text citation because it's somebody else's ideas. Otherwise, it's considered plagiarism. Don'ts. Don't make list summaries. List summaries are where you just list what happens each step of the way. Think about it this way. If you went to go see a movie and your friend asked you what was the movie about, you wouldn't start and give a scene-by-scene summary or list. You wouldn't say something like, the movie starts with an explosion. Then you see 3 people running. Then you see cops chasing those 3 people running. And then you see those people get into a car. This would become very, very monotonous and very, very boring for your listener. So we don't want to do that for our summaries for our papers either. Don't quote too much. This makes it seem like you maybe didn't understand what the source was about, or that you don't know how to properly put things into your own words. And don't use the same sentence structure as the original. Many times students will take something and then just pop out a few words and replace them with synonyms from a thesaurus. Using the same sentence structure as the original is still plagiarism. If you need to know more about plagiarism, please review the Avoiding Plagiarism module found in the Plagiarism and Documentation tab. Next, including quotations. When you include a quotation in your summary, you want to do these 3 things. We call them quotation sandwiches. First, you want to introduce the quote by telling who is saying it and using signal words. Then you want to give your quotation. And finally end with explaining what the quote means. This is like a sandwich. The top piece of bread is the introduction. The quote is the meat, the cheese, the lettuce, the tomato in the middle, and the explanation is at the end, the bottom piece of bread. So use this structure anytime you're including quotations.